So right now we're going to continue with this exciting life of David, and it's about David and Goliath, another very popular common story by children. Let's recap David's life. He's a shepherd boy. He's got 7 older brothers who are grown men, and Samuel is sent by God to find David as a new king, and he looks at all the older brothers. They were fit to be a king, but God says, Samuel, man looketh on outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. And these men's heart were not right before God. But David, as a little shepherd boy, loved the Lord with all his heart. He spent any spare moment he had reading, praying, and playing his musical instrument, the gift that God gave him. He practiced it to serve God. And what a training ground it was. And there he was looking after his sheep. He loved his sheep. His sheep would sit beside him. When they were in danger, he would come and he would keep them safe. And when Samuel saw David, he anointed him, and this was going to be the new king, because the king of Israel at that time was Saul. He was now a wicked king, and God wanted him removed to put a man after his own heart onto the throne. And David was no fearful a boy. Even as a boy, a bear and a lion both came different times and attacked the sheep, and he ran after and killed them with his bare hands. And that was the making of a man who was not a coward. He was brave, and he was willing to fight, and he was a fighter. He was no coward. He was willing to fight, and that's the type of man God wanted, a man with backbone who was afraid of no one or nothing. And King Saul, God has removed his spirit from him, so he's a very unhappy king. And David is brought because he could play the harp, and David is brought before the king to play the harp. And whenever David played, the presence of God was there, and the king was calmed down again. King Saul was a very angry king and very agitated king, and David was brought before him to play. Now, David was too young to be in the army, to be a soldier, so he was brought from the farm. He would play, then he would go back and look after the sheep again. But in the meantime, there's a battle breaking out between the Philistine army and the Israelite army. And of course, David belonged to Israel, and his brothers were old enough. They were they were put in the army. They were soldiers, and they were out to fight with the Philistines. And one day, David's father said, David, go and see how your brothers are doing in the battle, and see them, give my regards, and come back home to me and let me know how they're getting on. So he would pack some food and to take to his brothers, and with excitement he would go to see the battle. And as he's getting closer to the battle, he hears this monster of a man roaring and shouting, and he's screaming, and he's challenging a soldier from the Israelite army to come and fight him. And that was Goliath. He was not a natural looking man. He was over 9 feet tall. He was a monster, a beast of a man, and no human man could possibly fight him and win. So he's challenging, if one man comes and fights him, if that one man can fight Goliath and beat him, that all the Philistine army will come and submit themselves to Israel. But of course everyone was afraid. And David, worse than that, he was mocking God. He was mocking the God of Israel. And whenever David arrived, he said to his brothers, brothers, how are you? A little bit like Joseph. But his brothers told him to go home. David, what are you doing here? We're in the middle of a war. There's a battle going on, and you're just a boy. You're going to get killed. And then David heard Goliath roaring and shouting and taking the name of the Lord in vain, mocking the Lord God of Israel, the true and living God. And David said, why is no one rising to that challenge? He's mocking you, and he's mocking our God. Why is nobody going to fight him? And I said, David, have you seen the size of him? He's a monster. Go home to your dad. Go home to the sheep. You're just a little boy. And David says, is there not a cause? If you're not going to fight him, I'll fight him. He's mocking God. He's offending God. And if you're going to chicken out, I'll fight him. David rose to the challenge. Is there not a cause? People were mocking God, and he said, I'll go and I'll fight. And the news was quickly brought to Saul. There's a man here who wants to fight Goliath. Well, he's actually just a youth. And when David was brought before Saul, Saul said, David, you've made a mistake. This is not a playground. It's not a Sunday school picnic. There's a real battle going on. People are being killed. You cannot fight this man, Goliath. He's a giant, and you're just a little boy. David says, I'll fight him. He said, I fought lions, and I fought bears, and I've killed him, and I will kill that giant. And Saul could not persuade him. David was so adamant that he would fight Goliath and beat him. Nobody else would. So David went to the challenge. So Goliath said, you need to put on my armor to protect yourself. David was so young and so small. He put on Goliath's armor and he couldn't even physically carry it. It was so heavy. It was built for a man. And he says, Saul, this is going to hinder me. This is going to restrict me. Do you know, in the Christian life, people will have you do things and go places and wear things and do things. It restricts you in the Christian life. It hinders your walk with God. David says, I can't fight with these. I want to go myself. And David went. And before he went, he prayed. And he went to a little brook. All David has was a sling. Never even had a sword or a spear. A sling, and he picked up 5 stones. 5 stones, and it's told that Goliath had 4 other brothers. David was so confident that if he took out Goliath, he would take his 4 big brothers as well. That's how bold David was to fight for God. And David picks up the 5 little stones and puts one in his sling. And Goliath shouts, he's mocked, who are you to send a boy to me? And he was so angry at David, he said, I'm going to chop you up and feed you to the birds, the scavenger birds in the air. And David said, you come to me with your shield and your spear and your sword, but I come to you in the name of the Lord God of Israel. And all these people, your people and my people, will see today who the true Lord of heaven really is. And as Goliath was so angry, David started running towards him, and he started swinging the sling round and round and round and round, and he let the sling go, and the moment he let it go, the stone flew and hit Goliath right in the forehead. Bang! Down! The giant dropped, 9 feet tall. The big beast of an animal of a man fell to the ground, stone dead. David jumped on his body, took a sword and chopped off his head, and he carried the head back to Saul and said, there's your giant. He's dead. Do you believe that? This little boy, because God was with him, he conquered a giant. And there are many giant things in our lives today. Things that are too big for us. Temptations that are too big. Humanly speaking, we can't defeat them. But with God on our side, we can defeat any one of our giants if we'll ask God to help us.